live in. It ain't a home no more, just a property building with new tenants. So God be my witness, hold me. Why you acting like you don't know me? Like I haven't been in your zone. What's going on? I say what's going on? I say what's going on? What's going on? Yeah, okay.
Yes, guys. Yes. Thank you all for tuning in with me. Yes, thank you all for tuning in. This is Self-Care Wednesdays. Yes, Self-Care Wednesdays. And, we're making it through the week, guys. Yes, we are. We're making it through. I know for some, it may be just, a little bit rough making it through these weeks. Trying to get to the next whatever that we're trying to get to, on a daily basis. It can be a little tough for some. And, for some, it just might be, just be a piece of cake. For some, it just might be good. You know what I'm saying? But for others, I just wanted to say to you guys that, it's going to get better. Yes, it's definitely going to get better. And, I also say that, that there is a brighter days ahead. So you guys are listening to the Creative Lips Podcast. Yes, thank you for listening. And I am your host, Regina. Yes, I am your host, Regina. Thank you for all of the active listeners and all of the new listeners. Yes, thank you all for tuning in with me on this Self-Care Wednesdays. Yes, thank you guys for tuning in. And, I also want to say that, again, it's going to be brighter days ahead, guys. Yes, it is. We will get through. We will get through this. And, I always like to say, some self-affirmations, before every episode, that in fact that, if anything that you all are going through, only you know what you are going through. Only you know. I hope and pray that you will make it through. Out of any situation, any circumstance that you see that's before you. I hope and pray that you will make it through. We all got each other. We are here for each other. And it doesn't, hurt to just, say, hey, I know that, I'm going to make it through this. It doesn't hurt to be positive in any situation that is faced before you. And I know that, it's possible. It's possible that you guys can make it out of any situation that is faced before you guys. Okay? So I just wanted to say that to you all. Yes, wanted to say that to you all today. Any time that you're listening to my episodes, I always like to do that. All right. And then I also want to add, so I want to get into, this special, special steps and tips that I want to give today. But before I get into them, I want to say that when I do my Self-Care Wednesdays or anything that is pertaining to mental health, like any type of therapy or steps or tips, anything that is in that realm, I like to say that I am not a licensed psychologist or a licensed therapist. Okay, guys. So I just want to put that out there and just let you all know. So this, all of my steps and tips are just basically from my own research, my own experience. Yes, my own experience that I've been through in my whole 45 years, guys. Yes, and my opinion. So, you never know. Any steps that you might listen to today, it might help you. It might uplift you. It might give you some encouraging words. Or, you never know. You might just be able to do all the steps that, I say in any of my self-care Wednesdays or, any episodes when I talk about mental health and mental wellness. All right, guys? So I just wanted to say that. So now today's steps, yes, today's steps that, I want to talk about. This is just something that, we all are thinking about, well, majority of us is thinking about, since this month is still Mental Health Awareness Month, I want to continue on talking about mental health matters, in our daily quarantine life. Yes. I want to talk about that today, guys. Now, now that we are still, some of us, some states are opening up, slowly but surely, but for the majority of us that are still, in that stay at home order, some are still working from home, and, and then we have some that are homeschooling as well. And, and while we have the other hand, now we have the other side of people who have, either, lost their jobs and are still trying to stay above the pandemic, and, just trying to stay above water, just trying to figure out when the next, money is going to come in. When's the next meal? When is what, when are we going to, survive this? Like, how are we going to get through it? From my experience, so far, that, I have been in this pandemic. From my experience and, and also going through kind of similar situations, not as a pandemic, but going through setbacks in life. From my experience, I wanted to get into the 4 steps that I have learned along the way. So far, on how to manage through like the psychological effects of it, the psychological effects of going through setbacks and now, going through being in a quarantine state, being quarantined at home, with our family members, can be a blessing for some. And for some, it can be a curse. Now, y'all know those curses. Some of those family members that, you just have to stay home with. You have no choice. You have no choice but to stay at home with some of them. But in reality, we do have a choice. We do have a choice to, if we can stay at home with them or, social distance ourselves from them entirely. I mean, like entirely. Like, we would just move on or move out. You know what I'm saying? For some can do it. if it gets that bad, some can't. Now, for those who can't, I want you all to listen to this, to listen to these steps, because, just like I said, it's from my own experience. These steps might be helpful for you. And it's also helpful for people who live alone, who don't have any family members or any significant others or children, or, and you just live by yourself. You know what I'm saying? So, it can be, now getting back into that, it can be an opportunity for families, or your significant other and your children to come together, and strengthen your bonds and your love and, respect for each other. That can be a giving and a lasting opportunity to do that, by being constantly together. Unwillingly can put a considerable amount of stress on some relationships. On the other hand, small children may be overjoyed. Your children may be overjoyed, at the opportunity to be at home with you. And, of course, your significant others, of course, would love the opportunity to engage more, alone time with you. Because, if you are, one of those people, who work on a day-to-day basis, Monday through Friday, and, sometimes your schedules is kind of conflicting, and then now you can both work from home and see each other all the time. But just like I said, on the other hand, it could put a considerable amount of stress on the relationship sometimes, for some, if you are in close proximity, with each other on a day-to-day basis, and also for teens as well, because teens are used to interacting, now that they're home, they're staying home and not in school around amongst their peers. And, and of course the little ones too as well. If you are all not homeschooling your children as well before, Corona had hit, again, you can get some teens can be less excited and less thrilled to see mom and dad or whoever the caretaker is at home, and it causes tension. Tension can arise, within that family. Yes, it can. It can rise significantly. Yes, it can. And another vulnerable population is the elderly. Our grandparents and our older population, who are confined either to their homes or facilities, the nursing homes that they are in, that can also be detrimental to the mental health as well. That can also put a strain as well on their mental health as well. People always say that, there are things, some people do these things to try to pass the time away, like engaging in social media. You would engage in social media, and, most of the time it can ease the effect of quarantine for some. Some it can ease, because then, you can scroll the many countless of scrolls, through the different IG accounts and looking at IGTV accounts and, just looking through the endless accounts, you can ease and pass the time away. But it can't replace human interaction in physical space. No, it cannot. It cannot, guys. Some people try to replace it with that, but it cannot. So quarantine is often, at work, quarantine is often an unpleasant experience for some. Now that, COVID-19, the virus had hit all over the world. It's very unpleasant for some. Some can't even manage their mental capacity. For some can't even fathom that to stay home and be confined to your home all day. That experience for those who undergo it on a daily basis, it's really hard for some. And separation from your loved ones, the loss of freedom, uncertainty over disease status, some people get paranoid like that, They think, maybe they might have it or they don't have it, or I'm afraid to get it. I'm not going out there. And, and then all of a sudden, too, on the other hand, boredom sets in. Some people get bored quickly, especially the teens. I know the teens, and some adults too as well. They get bored, and that can occur, on occasion for some, and if that happens, it can create a dramatic, lasting effect. And some can be very traumatic, and some can end in tragedy as well, like suicide. And that's why I wanted to talk about this. That is the big key as to why I want to talk about, steps that we all can take to manage the psychological effects of being in a quarantine state. Yes. Because these effects can be, very, very traumatic. People are not used to this. People are not used to, getting into a space and time to where it's just like, okay, this is what I have to do. I'm so used to doing A, B, C. Now I have to do just A and maybe B sometimes, And the loss of that usual routine and reduced social and physical contact with others, can frequently show you frustration in many, and the sense of isolation from the rest of the world, which can be very distressing to us. So it can also trickle down to, different things that we think about too, on a day-to-day basis, like financially. Like, because, you're so used to having, access to a lot of things that we are used to having access to, and for some it's limited, and then for some, it's obsolete, it's gone. That financial loss, was also a big problem during quarantine, with people unable to work and having, it interrupted in a lot of everything that they do on a day-to-day basis for themselves and for their families. So there are signs. Now there are signs. I want to get into some of the signs before I get into the 4 steps. Because I wanted to really dive deep. I wanted to really dive deep into this one. Because there are some of, all tell signs that you can see within yourself, or you can see within your loved ones or your friends or whomever, that you may be struggling with the effects of being quarantined. Okay, an increase in potential problem behaviors such as drinking, smoking, drug use, overeating, online gambling, and excessive shopping. Now that people are home, those things can be real rampant. The things that you used to do before, you're doing excessive amounts of it even more. I had to stop myself because I found myself doing almost excessive shopping. Yes. Excessive shopping. And I had to slow my roll. You know what I'm saying? Because sister ain't got no coin like that. Not like I used to. But, I was getting stuff that I needed. But however, and of course stuff that I want, I ain't gonna lie. But however, those things can be an all-tell sign. And the next one is being hyper focused on tracking the news or social media. Sharp changes in mood depending upon what's being viewed, like on TV as well. I'm going to get into that too. The steps on how to combat it, how to overcome it, how to manage that. Exhibiting poor sleeping patterns, consistent poor sleep, or too much sleep are both red flags. Yes, it is. At first, I know when I first started this, it was hard for me. Sleep patterns was all over the place. And not feeling motivated to return phone calls or messages from friends and family. And, last one, losing all sense of routine, which might include not keeping up with your basic hygiene, showers, brushing your teeth, washing your hair, or home tasks such as laundry, dishes, and clutter. Those things, those are the signs that you could be struggling. So now, how do we combat all those things? How do we manage it? But fortunately, there are some effective strategies you can employ that will foster a healthier mindset. If you are, being in quarantine state right now. So number 1 is combat frustration and boredom. Yes. So how can we combat this frustration and boredom? Some of us, sometimes we distressed of being quarantined. It stems from that boredom. We get into that bored state when we done did everything else. We done cleaned our house. We done spent time with the children. And, now it's our time. Now it's our me time. Or even if you are doing those things, sometimes that boredom can overcome and then it turns into frustration. Finding ways to stay occupied is important. So try to maintain as many of your routines as you can. Keep working on projects or find new activities with yourself or with your family to fill your time, whether it's, organizing your closet, it could be something like that, or trying out new creative hobbies. Like I mentioned this before, like learn a new skill. Getting things done can provide a sense of purpose. Yes, it can. It can bring a big sense of gratitude and purpose and fulfillment if you can add these variations in your day-to-day daily basis. I know what I do. I do so much on a daily basis when I'm here. I got myself an exercise bike, guys. Yes, I am so happy about it. And yeah, it's been sitting. I'm not going to lie. But however, I only had it for about a week now. But, I'm going to incorporate it into everything that I'm going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. I try to incorporate new things to keep my creative juices flowing. Yes. That's something that, that can also be a booster. It can boost you to the 10th power if you do that. It gives you something to work towards and something to look forward to each day. Because when you're done all of the things that you're supposed to do, like the things that is on your to-do list, and then you have the things that must get done, especially if you are homeschooling your children, and especially if you are working from home. Those things have to get done. But then the to-do list, like cleaning your house, making sure the kitchen is clean, bathroom, whatever, laundry, whatever, And then you set aside time for the for the creative stuff for you to do. Then once you lay down, you have that schedule. You lay down, and then you just think about, oh man, I can't wait to do something else that's new, that's creative. You add it into the routine, your daily routine that you do on a daily basis. You look forward to that. So make a plan, guys. Make a plan. List some things you'd like to accomplish. And then start checking a few things off your list each day. Each day, guys. Yes, each day. Now, this is some of my ideas for staying connected. You can just eat regular meals with your family. And then, or even with yourself, if you're alone. And when you do that, you can check in with each other. When you're sitting around the table or sitting around wherever you all guys are sitting around eating your food, y'all can check in with each other. You can say, hey, how are you doing? What's going on with you? Or you can talk about something that's interesting. Spark up a conversation by talking to your loved ones. That bonding, that's what you can do. And you can also check in with your friends as well. You can do the same thing too. If you're alone, you can check in with your friends. You can do that over the phone. You can say, hey girl, let's do this every day at 5:00. I'm going to cook something. And then, and then you ask her, what are you cooking? All right, I'm going to call you at 5:00. I'm going to make tacos. And then your girlfriend tells you what she's cooking. Okay, I'm going to make, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And then when y'all call each other at 5:00, y'all can probably take a picture of your food. She can take a picture of her food, and y'all can send each other the picture or video or whatever. Make it fun. It doesn't really have to be like in a way to where, you just say, I don't have nothing to do. I'm alone. Or my family, we really don't have anything to do. There is so much that you can do and accomplish on a day-to-day basis. You can also use different forms of communication. Of course, just like I said, the phone. You can text, you can email, you can message person, and even FaceTime. You can Skype someone and Zoom, of course. You can Zoom somebody. It's so much there. It's so much out there for us all to do. So much out there for all of us to do. You never know. You can probably make a new friend on social media. But it depends on that type of friend too, as well. That's my mind thinking. Because, some people out there, they need to stay where they're at. But however, I don't want to, go off on the deep end. But however, you guys get what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? Try to support others and reassure your friends and family who are feeling stressed. Who are feeling stressed out and worried. Use that social media. Use that, not just look at pictures and look at other celebrities, look at other people. Use that social media. Use that Instagram. Use that Facebook. Use that Twitter. And this new thing, of course, you got Discord, Whatever platform that you use that's out there, use it to stay connected to others. And also take care of your body, guys. You need to take care of your body. Take care of that temple. That's something that I've been doing on a daily basis. I've done it with my diet immediately. Immediately I done it. Yes, I did. You have to strive to take care of your body by eating well, exercising often, and getting that daily sunshine. Yes, you can take those walks. Take a walk. Take a walk around the block. There's nobody out as much. So you can take that walk. Not only can this improve your mental health by creating structure and distracting you from the noise of, the everyday thing that you are trying to do. It improves your physical and mental health. All right. All right, guys. So now number 2. Establish those routines. Now, I talked a little bit about it, but these routines, we have to establish it. The disruption in your normal daily routines can be one of the most difficult aspects of quarantine. This can leave you feeling, like there is no direction in your life. Where am I going? What am I doing? What am I going to do today? How am I going to do it? Those thoughts are going to start popping up. And, as we all try to figure out, there are some people who have got the gist of it. Yes. And I say, kudos to all of you. Yes, kudos to all of you who have got this quarantine shit down pat. You know what I'm saying? Yes, I give it up to all of you. But for the ones who are trying to still figure it out and, on how to fill all those hours of the day in, we can learn a lot from establishing that routine if we just do it. We just have to do it and stick to it on a day-to-day basis. Now, just like I said, if, for the ones who are working from home, if you are working from home, it can be helpful to structure your time much like a regular workday. You're so used to getting up, getting yourself ready, making breakfast or whatever the case may be. Then you're going on your commute, whether you commute or whether you drive. You're so used to doing that. You can do that at home. Of course, you're not leaving your house physically, but you can create structure by doing that on a day-to-day basis, on a daily basis. Same thing. You can have that structure in there. It can be helpful to have that structure because your time is valued every day, and if you're working for that company, then they value your time. And if you value your time, then those routines should be like clockwork, like a piece of cake. It should be very beneficial to you. Just like it was before we went into the stay-at-home order, before we went into lockdown. For some, it can be, it started off as a challenge for some. But however, if you're at home with other family members, including children who are now at home all day as well, that's leaving you without the structure of that normal school day. So we have to get ourselves into establishing those routines, because kids can be, your kids can be left feeling just as out of the norm as you. You know what I'm saying? So we have to establish it. We have to make it happen. Have a board where you can just write down what you are doing on a day-to-day basis. That would be very beneficial and very helpful. Now, if you are trying to keep your little ones entertained while stuck in the house, or even trying to keep working, working your telework job, your stay-at-home, work job amidst everything, it is important to find that routine that works for you. So it's good to have that routine because you can plan out the activities for your little ones that will keep everyone busy, including yourself, so you can get some work done. It has to be like that. We have to try to balance it out. It has to be like that. Try creating a daily schedule, but don't get too wrapped up in sticking to a strict routine. Because if you stick to a strict routine with your little ones, then of course chaos is going to break out now. So you got to try to not overwhelm them and overwhelm yourself as well. We have to make your own routines and break up the day in order to starve off that, repetitiveness. Just like trying to creating a new habit. Think about creating a new habit. Starting and sticking to a new routine. Of course, it's going to take some time and effort for some. It's still some. We have been like, this thing hit ever since March. We're into almost into the middle of May. You know what I'm saying? And some haven't really gotten accustomed to the effort. and trying to breaking up that routine on a day-to-day basis, but if you really just sit down and think about it, only you know yourself and your family the best way. You know what your little ones need. So if something isn't working, it doesn't seem to be working, then try, tweaking it a little bit. Try tweaking your schedule. Maybe talk to your manager and say, hey, I'm at home. I can check in, maybe around 9 o'clock or maybe 10 o'clock or, you know what I'm saying? See if they might be a little lenient and to trying to, accommodate in this pandemic. You never know. If you communicate with your manager, and you never know, it might just help. And it'll be beneficial to make it work for your needs as well. Because you come first. Because think about it. Now let's think about it. Now some of you people who are working from home, you're probably listening to this like, I can't do that. But think about it. If you was to lose your job, right? They're going to fill that position. They're going to fill it with somebody else. And then you're going to continue on with your life and your family and do what you need to do what's best for you. So, just like I said again, only you know yourself best. So do what's best for your needs and what's best for your family, so that your family won't be stressed out as well. And then, you'll end up not getting anything done as well. So try your best to establish a routine on a day-to-day basis to try to combat, different things for your family and for your mental health as well, because that will help you in the long run. Clear communication. I know that from my experience when I had my little ones, that's something that I had to do. My experience doing that, my children, I had to take them to school all the time. Of course, we have to take our children to school. You know what I'm saying? That's a given. If you are a good parent, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to, talk about the bad parents, but however, I had to take my children to school every day and I had to pick them up every day. So my job experience was in the office field. I had to work a 9-to-5 jobs. And school, of course, children had to be to school by either 8:30, 8:15, and then they get out at 3. So my hours had to work around their schedule. So the jobs that I found, I talked with them in the interview. And when I worked, I talked with them. I said, look, can I work these hours? And I was open and willingly to take a pay cut, because my children came first and they understood. So those were the best jobs of my life, I can honestly say, and those were the most understanding managers that, I can honestly say. And, you never know. Just try that, guys. Try to communicate, and you never know how it's going to work out for you in the end. Yes. All right. So now let's get on to number 3. Stay informed, but not overwhelmed. Yes, not overwhelmed, guys. People tend to experience greater anxiety when they feel like they don't have access to the information that they need. FOMO. I always say FOMO. And for those who don't know, FOMO means fear of missing out. You always want to know everything. You always want to know what Susie said or did. You always want to know. You always want to be in the know. You know what I'm saying? On the other hand, however, is the sense of panic that can stem from being immersed in 24/7 in the reports from the news that focus on the inaccurate or overly negative information that has been feeding us on a daily basis. Yes. Rather than spend your time watching, news, whether it be on your television or the internet or your phone, focus on getting helpful information from trusted sources. Sources such as, it could be the CDC, or, any other local health departments within your city. And, your doctor can be helpful too as well, or a holistic practitioner, someone that is very knowledgeable about health, someone that's very informed about health. Try not to feed your mind with a lot of this bullshit that's out there. Try to do research on your own. Try it. Just try it one day. People don't want to do the research. People always want somebody to do the shit for them. I just don't understand why people do not want to do research. People do not want to read. They want to wait until the 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, or whatever time that the news comes on just to get their information. Do the information yourself. We are home. We are here. We are in our own space and in our time. We need to stay informed and make sure that we are aware for our own selves and our own family. That's what we need to do on a day-to-day basis. It would be very helpful and beneficial if we were to do that, guys. Right? And I also wanted to add to, now remember that your kids are stressed too. Remember that your kids are also stressed too. Because research from the CDC has found that children who had been through quarantine had exhibited PTSD symptoms at 4 times the rate of children who had not been in a quarantine state. That's why, guys, that's why I always say that this would be a phenomenal, great time to talk with your children about COVID-19, about this outbreak in a way that is informative and age appropriated, and it reassures them. It makes them know that, yes, I heard this from my mom or my dad or my, whoever is their guardian in their life. Try and focus on maintaining a sense of structure at home. And this will model a healthy and positive environment for your home if you do that. Don't immerse yourself. Don't overwhelm yourself with stuff, but stay informed. But by doing this, you are managing your own anxiety, and it can calm the fears of your children and yourself at home, guys. Okay? So do that. Now, last but not least, number 4. Always remember why you are doing this. Sometimes I have to sit up in there and ask myself, why am I home? Why am I doing this? And then that's when I remember, why am I doing this? When you are feeling frustrated or cooped up, you just feel like, I I just want to go somewhere. I just want to get out. You see all the people, on Instagram. You look at all the things, you say, damn, I remember I used to do that. I want to do that. It can be helpful to think about the reasons why you and your family is in a quarantine state right now. Why are we here? How did this happen? Now one thing we can think about too, we can think about the positive stuff. We can think about, all the stuff that we used to do and want to do so bad. But if you have a second, just a time to think about this. But in order to combat that, feeling frustrated and stressed and all those things, we can avoid it. We can avoid others' perceptions and other thinking, other thinking of a way that it can just deter us from not being helpful. Not being helpful. And if we've been potentially exposed to the coronavirus, by avoiding others is an act of concern for the well-being of others. We need to minimize those thoughts that might unknowingly us spreading that illness to other people. Even if you're currently asymptomatic. A person producing or showing symptoms. Finding ways to protect your mental health when you are quarantined is important. Since research has shown that this type of brief isolation can potentially have a number of detrimental effects, from either it could be the low mood, irritability, to the symptoms of PTSD, just like I stated before, and anxiety. So staying busy, keeping in contact with others by phone and social media, and maintaining a sense and structure are just a few key ways that you can mentally manage your quarantine life. If we can just do that. And it also doesn't help to seek professional help if needed. And there are ways to find someone to talk to without leaving the house, guys, too. Now, we always think that, okay, well, I'm here. If I really do need to talk to someone, how can I talk to someone? Telehealth options are increasing. It's like, they said that the hotlines are like flooded, and we can use those options because it allows us, us who are trying to seek help, people who are trying to seek help, to talk to doctors, therapists, psychologists online. And there are a number of online therapy options that allow people to speak with a professional, online. You can do it either by phone call. You can do it by text now. They have apps. They have so many apps. You can just go into your app store. And you can do it through email. And you can also do it through the video call too, like Skype, Zoom. You can do that as well. Because if you do that, guys, it can be a great way to get extra support during this difficult time. Yes, during this difficult time, guys. All right, so now the number one tip. It's not easy to create new routines, guys. Now, I know it's not. It's not, it's really not. I can honestly say, or add structure to a day when our lives feel completely disrupted and turned upside down. Yes. There are so many effective strategies you can employ daily that will promote, a healthier mindset. By being in a quarantine state right now, perhaps the most effective way you can maintain optimal emotional health, both in good times and especially in not so good times, is to remember that plans don't always go as planned. Plans don't go always as they should. But always, when we're trying to get structured, when we're trying to stay focused, when we're trying to stay informed, always remember to be kind to yourself, guys. Always remember to be kind first to yourself. Because this is not the time to put extra pressure and all those expectations on yourself. Now is the time to really, take our time and try our best. Just keep on trying, guys. And in the end, it will all get better. All right? All right, guys. I just wanted to say that if you all enjoyed that episode, guys, yes, leave me that 5-star rating, guys. Come on now. Yes, leave me that 5-star rating, guys. And also, I would love for you guys to leave me a review on iTunes, guys. Leave me a review, guys. And also follow me on my social media, guys. Follow me on Instagram at CreativeLipsPodcast.
So fucking wonderful.
Come on, guys. Follow me there. And also follow me on Twitter. Yes. Follow me on Twitter, guys, at CreativeLipsPod, guys. Follow me, guys. Just follow me on all my social media, guys. And we will all get through this, guys. We all will get through this. We're all in this together. And just hang in there, guys. Keep your head up. Come on, guys. You can do it. I believe in all of you. I believe in all of you guys. All right. Until next time.
I say, what's going on? What's going on? Okay. I thought that things could get better. Oh, no. I thought that love lasts forever. But forever's as long as a day. And the day is as long as an hour. When I'm with you, time's not a thing, no. I never knew a greater power. Lightning strike through my heart. What the fuck's going on?
You are now listening to episode 39 of the Creative Lips Podcast.